Wealth is a Choice podcast. Boom.
Let's listen to it. Let's listen to it.
All right, Steve. I've been looking forward to talking to you since we met, which is, I think, about a month ago.
It's been about 30 days, yeah.
30 days, all right. And you were telling me what it is that you do for a living, but what's been an extremely passionate side of what you've been doing for a living. I don't know if you're doing it for a living, actually, but within your living
right.
of expertise. And I would love it if you could just start to share what are the people that you've helped out and help us understand what you've been so involved in over these last years.
Sure. Well, I'm a professional investigator, basically a fraud investigator. And about, it was 2016, it was December, I opened up a letter, and it was a juvenile lifer in prison, and he was asking for help. Reading the letter, it really broke my heart. And I thought hard about getting into criminal work. So I decided I would help this individual. And at that time, he had an individual that was incarcerated with him that had been in prison for 2 years on a rape charge that he claimed that he didn't commit. And he wanted me to talk to him. And I talked with him. And
so this is the person in the letter also asking you to talk to somebody.
Yeah, so he asked me to talk to another guy that was incarcerated, and so I talked with him. I mean, being convicted of rape, I mean, that's and not doing criminal work at the time. I was hesitant, but when I'm a good listener and good reader of a person, and after talking to him, something told me that this kid was innocent, and I told him I would definitely take a look at his case. He said he didn't have a lot of money, but he needed my help. He said that he may be a lot of things in life, but he's not a criminal. He's not a rapist. He didn't rape anybody. So I went and talked with his mother, and to give you a little backstory on this case. The rape happened when he was 16 years old, the alleged rape. 22 years later, he gets a knock on the door from the police stating that we need you to come downtown, we need to talk to you. And I watched that interrogation.
And where is this?
This is in the city of Detroit.
Okay.
And what it was is they had 11,000 rape kits that had been put in a closet for 22 years, and someone opened up the door and said, wow, we got a bunch of rape kits here.
Okay.
Kim Worthy, who's the prosecutor, she came out and made a news conference on the news stating that we're gonna test every one of these kits, and we're gonna have quick justice.
Wow.
So, which is the right thing to do.
Right.
And so they knocked on my client's door and brought him downtown and started interrogating him. And I've done interrogations and interviews, thousands of them over 3 decades now. And just looking at his interrogation, it took me 30 seconds to realize this kid was innocent. And they're offering him a 10-year plea deal if he just admits to it. And he's
38 at the time now.
He's 36 years old
36 now.
Yeah. And he said, I'm not gonna admit to anything because I didn't rape anybody, so right. I'm not taking a plea. Mm-hmm. And so he ended up being convicted. He went through jury trial, and he was convicted and sentenced.
Wow.
And he was I think it was 50 to 70 years in prison.
Wow.
He wasn't told who the victim was. He asked who the victim was.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and they said, it's a victim. We can't tell you her name.
Was she a minor at the
She was
time?
15 years old.
Is that why they wouldn't say the name?
No, they said because she was a victim. They showed a picture of her at 35 years old.
Okay.
And they showed her a picture of him at 36 years old.
Okay.
And they both did not recognize each other.
Okay.
And they only told her his name is James Clay, and she didn't know a James Clay. And so it, kind of just went through the court system, and he was found guilty. When I talked to the mother, I asked her for a picture of him when he was arrested.
Okay.
She said, well, I have his driver's license, which expired, I think, 2018. So I took that photo, kind of blew it up, as much as I could on one piece of paper. And then I asked for a picture of her son when he was 16 years old. And so at that point, there was only really one thing I could do, and that was to go down and sit with the victim, which was...
And what gave you the idea of even bringing these pictures in?
Well, to me, I just wanted to see... I kind of had a gut feeling that this was a huge mistake. I mean, and just, to look back at that case, I mean, that whole investigation took one day.
Yeah.
Where some of these criminal investigations take 2-3 years. This took 4 or 5 hours of my time to start with.
Yeah.
I went down, I talked with her and her husband, and it was a pretty traumatic moment for her husband and me. I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, because she was a victim, she was raped. And so I showed her a picture of James Clay at 36 years old, his driver's license, and she said, that's the guy that raped me. That's James Clay.
Right.
And I said, okay. I said, well, I got another picture. I showed her this picture of him at 16, and she goes, oh my God, that's Chad.
Wow.
I go, who's Chad? She goes, that's my boyfriend in high school. And I said, did you have a consensual relationship with her? Did you have sex with him? He goes, oh yeah, we did. We actually, that day we skipped school. We went to his aunt's house and we had sex.
Unbelievable.
And she goes, I left to go home, and I went into a party store and got a soda and came out, and an older guy took me at gunpoint and raped me behind the building. She said she went home, told her mom took her to the hospital, and they got a rape kit done. And then she sent her daughter to Alabama to be with her father to get her out of Detroit.
Okay.
And at that point, she never saw Chad again.
Okay.
And she goes, so why do you have a picture of Chad? She says. And I said, well, look at James Lewis' middle name. It was James Chad Lewis Clay.
Okay.
And she goes, I go, Chad's his middle name. That's what he went by in high school. And she goes, what are you telling me? And I said, James Clay and Chad are the same person. And she put her head between her knees, and she goes, oh my God, what have I done? And I said, you haven't done anything. I said, you weren't given all the information.
And how long had he been in prison?
He'd been in about 2.5 years.
Okay.
And I, at this point, I mean, her husband's sitting next to her. This is a lot to take in. Obviously I wanted to get an affidavit from her, but I knew that wasn't the time to do it. I told her, here's my business card. I go, I want you to process this. I want you to think about, possibly doing an affidavit. And if you feel comfortable doing an affidavit, give me a call. And the next day I got a call, but I got a call from her husband.
Okay.
And he said, my wife wants to sit down and talk with you, and she wants to do an affidavit.
Okay. So
I drove out to her house the next morning, and we sat there at the kitchen table, and she drafted out an affidavit basically stating that James Chad Clay was her boyfriend, and that they had consensual sex or relationship, and he wasn't the one that raped me, and this is a whole big mistake, and that this young man shouldn't be in prison.
Okay.
So, one would think that's that. This guy's out.
But at what point did James know who the victim was?
When I told him. I went in, I said, you know what?
So not until she saw the picture, or before that?
So I showed her James' picture, and at that point, I showed her the picture when he was 16 years old. At that point, that's when it clicked. I went back to James, my client, and he was like, I told her that this was your girlfriend.
And so he didn't know until
he didn't know
him
until told him. He goes, this was a whole, and he goes, you get, so he was like, very, very happy that because now he's going to get his freedom back, or so we thought.
Right. So
I get the affidavit, and the next day I get a call from his appellate attorney, and he says, Mr. Crane, I'm James' appellate attorney, and I hear you have some information for me. I go, yeah, and I explained to him, what I just explained to you, and he says, listen, I don't want your investigation. I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, I'm not going to take your investigation. I'm not going to look at your investigation. And I go, why is that? He goes, because James Clay's not innocent. And I said, plus, you didn't let this young woman know that you didn't give her Miranda rights. And I said, well, I'm not a police officer. And he said, you didn't have an attorney present. And I said, I don't have to have an attorney present when I talk to somebody. And he said that, you didn't explain to her that changing her statement now could put her in a position of perjury. And I said, I don't think there's a judge on this planet that would charge this young lady with perjury when she wasn't given the full story.
Right.
So I was kind of floored by that, and I had to sit down and process that. I kind of thought maybe this guy was having a bad day. So I called him back the next day, and he said the same thing. He goes, I don't want your investigation. If you mail it to me, bring it to my office. It's going to go in the shredder.
Wow.
I tried contacting the prosecutor's office, the conviction integrity unit. No one seemed to want to listen to me, and I guess it's because no one knew who I was. Most criminal investigators, have a name for themselves. They've been doing it for a long time, and here's some fraud investigators showing up with, potential innocent claim on a client. So I didn't know what to do. At that point, I was very upset with this attorney. I filed a complaint with the appellate commission in Lansing, hoping that they would investigate it. And I turned over my whole investigation over to the appellate commission, and months went by, and they wouldn't return my phone calls or my emails. And, I just thought that this young man's going to spend, the next 50 years in prison. And so then I said, what about the media? So I started reaching out to different media groups, and I guess I lucked out because I called a young lady by the name of Alicia Anderson. She was with the Free Press at the time, and she sat and listened to what I just explained to you. Mm-hmm. And she says, wow, if everything you're telling me is true, then there's an innocent guy behind bars. Mm-hmm. So she took my investigation, and I had talked to a lot of other people in addition to the victim. I talked to some of his friends, and they confirmed that they were in love with each other. That there's no way he would rape her. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the type of relationship they had. Mm-hmm. But so Elisa Anderson with the Free Press, she went through and re-interviewed everybody. And she dug into the court file documents, read everything. I mean, mm-hmm. She did a really, really fantastic job of, making sure this guy was innocent before she published a story. Okay. Which took a couple months as well. So right. I get a phone call, and she says, Steve, we're going to publish this story on a Sunday. It's going to be front page paper. Wow. With, I think 2 full pages inside. Wow. And explaining the story. And I didn't pick the paper up, but I started getting phone calls from family and friends and neighbors saying, hey, you're in the Free Press. And it was just a small little blurb. So I'm thinking maybe this guy's going to get his day in court. And
what was there another DNA in the rape kit besides
yeah, there was. So when I talked, when I went back to get the affidavit, the husband had a couple questions. One was, he said, James Clay's DNA was in the rape kit, and if he didn't rape my wife. Who did? I said, well, there's two specimens. There's James Clay, an unidentified specimen in the rape kit.
Okay.
And he goes, we didn't know that. The police didn't tell us that.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, well, here's the forensic report.
Wow.
And I laid that out on the table.
Okay.
And then he mentioned that the police told them that James Clay failed a polygraph. He never took a polygraph. That was a complete lie. So that, that kind of pushed them to go ahead with the to try James Clay and get the conviction, which is all they really wanted. They wanted to close the case down, quick justice on these rape kits, and they got quick justice. It just wasn't the right verdict.
And can people say anything about a polygraph? Like one was taken, not taken, failed or didn't fail?
You mean can they go and tell?
Like I don't know, legally, is that part of the process? Is that part of the interrogation? Normally,
normally, if you're sitting down with the victim, there's really
why would you lie to the victim?
There should be no reason to lie to the victim. Now, if you're sitting down with a potential criminal that may be involved, there's police, use tactics and don't always tell the truth to get to the truth.
Right.
But
there's no reason with the victim.
But for the victim, you're going to lay all the facts out on the table and say this is what we have.
Right.
And they just weren't given all the facts.
Okay.
And so she made her decision to move forward with charging James Clay because they painted a picture that he was the guy.
Right.
And she believed that.
Right.
And anybody else looking at the case would believe that as well.
Right.
But James Clay, he was, his mom even told me, he said, Steve, I know my son, and, he may not be perfect in every sense of the world. Everybody has their issues. But one thing my son is not, and that is a criminal or a rapist.
Yeah.
And
it's unbelievable to be in prison charged for rape, not even knowing who was raped.
Exactly. And not only that, but when you're in prison for rape, that's a stigma that is hard to overcome because the inmates, they treat rapists, not good. So he had a lot of issues that came down on him from other inmates because of the fact that he was a rapist. Other inmates don't like rapists, and they will do bad things and beat you up and stab you and so on and so forth. It's just not a fun place to be at all, let alone being in there as a rapist.
Wow.
So anyways, I
why is that, by the way?
What's that?
I've never understood the beat. My relationship with prisons is seeing it in movies.
Right.
So I've never been in, to visit. I guess I did visit one a long time ago, but I've never understood how there can be a culture within a prison where how the prisoners treat other prisoners and.
Oh, you have gangs. There's gangs in prison, and there's different, people, different groups. It's kind of in a way the same as it is out here. There's different, you have different classes of people on the outside, and it's kind of the same way on the inside as well. I've been in different prisons throughout Michigan, and it's definitely not a place I'd want to end up.
Yeah.
End up in. It's just not. It's and it's prison. It's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a nice plush place.
No, it's not. You're there. You're being punished for something you did. Hopefully you did what you're in there for. But you're also not supposed to be stabbed and beaten and victimized. And
this kind of came at a point in my life where I really never I'm probably responsible for putting in literally hundreds of people. Have had them arrested over the years for fraud, embezzlement, and things of that nature. And I really never sat back and thought about someone being incarcerated and being innocent. Just something I never really thought about.
Why'd you even open the letter?
Well, it was Christmas Eve, and we're on the eve of Christmas right now. I was getting ready to head out of town, and I went out to the mailbox, and there was one letter in there, and it was pretty thick. And something told me to open it up. Typically, I would throw it in the garbage. I can honestly say prior to that, I probably received 2 or 3 letters from prisoners asking for help, I assume. But I never opened one of them. I didn't do criminal work, so I just kind of tossed it in the garbage. Mm-hmm. This one I opened up, I read it. I literally got emotional. I mean, it was a juvenile lifer, and it broke my heart. Mm-hmm. And he needed my help. And I knew that if I didn't help him, maybe he's not going to get anybody to reach out and help him. And looking back on his particular case, 2 years later, I walked him out, and I sat down at Outback Steakhouse that night that he walked out of prison after 26 years, and I said, I got to tell you something. It's been bothering me. And he says, what's that? And I told him, you were my first criminal case. Mm. And he said, I know. And I go, why didn't you tell me? He goes, because I sent 17 letters out to different investigators, and you're the only one that reached back out to me and said, I want to help you. Yeah. So that kind of was the spark that got me, going on this. Yeah. And I've been doing it now since 2017. It's not everything that I do, but it's kind of my way of giving back. And I try to pick and choose the cases that I do take on, because I really am focused on actual innocence.
So let's go back to James. So what happened?
So the Free Press, they did their story, and then at that point, the prosecutor's office, the Conviction Integrity Unit, their ears perked up, and it's my understanding that they decided to investigate it as well. Okay. They wanted to make sure that what the Free Press is saying is true. Is accurate. There's also, and I didn't know it at the time, it eventually got to court, not too long after that Free Press article. I show up down at Frank Murphy Hall of Justice down there, downtown, and the judge, says, will the 3 investigators please stand up and leave the room? And I'm like, 3? I look around, and there was a detective that I believe worked for the prosecutor's office or the Conviction Integrity Unit's office. He stood up, and then there was a female investigator that I know. In fact, I talked to her the week before this hearing, and we walked outside, and I asked her, I said, I talked to you last week. You didn't tell me that you were investigating this case. And he says, well, Steve, we have confidentiality when we do investigations, and I couldn't tell you. Okay. And I asked her, I said, how did your investigation come out? And she says, it came out the same as yours. Okay. And I go, what about the prosecutor's detective? And they said his came out the same way. He goes, this kid's innocent. Okay. So we're just sitting out there talking for maybe 10 minutes, and then the doors open, and the victim and my client walk out, and they give each other a big hug. And he's a free man. He's free, just like that. Yeah. So it was. Didn't have to go back to prison. Didn't have to go back to prison. No. And he's. I hear from him every now and then, but he's he just wanted to put all that nightmare behind him, and just get on with his life. Yeah. I mean, and literally he could have had a huge lawsuit with the city. But he didn't pursue that. He just wanted to get back to his life and put that nightmare behind him. And wow. So that was it was a good moment for me, because I kind of planted the seed that maybe this is something I can do to give back. Yeah. I've been doing this for a long time, and when you get into your 60s, you start looking at ways to get back to society and back to community, and this is what I kind of chose to do, in addition to all the other work that I do with my business. Yeah. So how much time passed from that moment that he was able to walk out and hug each other to the time that you knew he was innocent? Well, I mean, like I told you a few minutes ago, I mean, this is probably, I mean, if you look back at all the investigations that I've ever done, I mean, this was probably one of the in regards to getting the actual evidence.
Did you get the letter around Christmas time? And when did he get out?
Well, it took, going through the appellate commission and then trying to figure out, get the media involved. I mean, that was well over a year and a half.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So we could have got him out relatively quick if someone would have just listened to me.
How hard is it to know that somebody's innocent and they're still there? I mean, I would think like every day, every hour would be precious.
Oh yeah. I talk to guys, every week and of cases that I'm working on, and they're telling me that they're innocent, and my job's not to just take what they're telling me and believe that. I gotta read through all the documents.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta go back and interview witnesses. I gotta look for new evidence or what they call Brady violations. Just other things that could get the guy back in court.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it until I get through all that process, and it could be, 100 hours of reading and research, and before I even decide, man, there's a good chance this guy is innocent. But I'll tell you one thing though. Walking James Clay out seemed like an easy task, and it was in regards to getting a convicted person out. I thought this is pretty easy. I mean, we can do this. We can do this on other cases. But I found out once I dug into doing criminal work that it's pretty easy to get an innocent person incarcerated.
Okay.
Almost impossible to get them out. It's a hard task, and it's just I think there's probably 6 to 10% of the people incarcerated they're actually innocent.
Where does that come from?
Those statistics?
Yeah.
Well, I've always heard the statistics of 10%. I
Okay.
don't know if it's 10%. I don't know the real percentage. I mean, that's just an estimate that someone throws out there.
Okay.
But some of the cases I have a table, one room in my office dedicated to open cases, and some of the cases that I have are, they should be looked at by the conviction integrity unit or the prosecutor's office, because there's Brady violations, there's new evidence that's been found, but there's a lot of politics in it when it comes down to this type of work. I mean,
what's a Brady violation?
Brady violation would be basically new evidence or information that was in the file. For instance, if there was an alternate suspect, if someone's in there for murder, and I have a case in the Supreme Court right now where my client, the only reason that he's even in the system is because his ex-girlfriend called Crime Stoppers.
Okay.
And to get back at him because he's dating now her best friend, and I don't have a problem talking about this because he's given me permission and it's public knowledge. It's
right.
in the Supreme Court, but in that particular case, I came across a police document in regards to a crime that happened 4 blocks away 23 hours later. And this was a horrific crime. It was a robbery where after a couple was robbed at gunpoint, my client was accused of raping the wife in front of the husband.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty much unheard of. It's
right.
a terrible, horrific crime.
Right.
And in his police file was a police document that said this guy tried to rob this couple at gunpoint 23 hours later, 4 blocks away, and then he wanted to rape the wife in front of the husband, and he matched the age and description that a witness at the original crime indicated, and had the same type of gun, same type of shoes, and so forth.
Threats and language.
Yeah,
right?
and the police said we need to get the DNA, and they never got the DNA. Prosecutor's office told me that there is no DNA.
Okay.
But we we found that there is DNA. So so that's newly new. You know, that'll be new evidence as well at that level, Supreme Court level.
So, and then on this one, was there DNA on the rape?
Well, in his case, there was a rape kit that was done, and my client was excluded from the DNA. With the exception of there was a small specimen in the anal part, which there was no anal sex in that particular case, but it was inconclusive. That piece of DNA could be, you know, one of 8,000 men out there. But all the other DNA he was excluded.
Okay.
And then I have a witness that said the guy was, you know, late 30s, early 40s, 180 pounds. My client was 19 years old.
Oh my goodness.
5'6" and about 130 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah.
You know, and living 45 minutes from the crime scene with no car, and with an alibi. Okay. You know, he's with his fiance's mother for having dinner when this all went down. So, you know, that's another case where that one document was newly discovered evidence that we were hoping would get his case back in court. All we're asking for is an evidentiary hearing where we can lay it out in front of a judge, and we've been fighting for 6 years now to get that done.
So crimes committed, identical crimes committed, you said a day later?
On which case?
On this one. So crimes committed, and was it a day later?
It was 23 hours later. So
23 hours later, another crime.
It was the same exact MO. Yeah. And
then how long before the crime was your client brought in for questioning? Did this process start? Did the ex-girlfriend called it in?
She called Crime Stoppers, and then the police, their focus was on him. They got his cell phone number. They pinged his phone at a local supermarket, and they went in there and took him down. He was
because she said he matched a description.
Well, she gave a description to the police, or to the Crime Stoppers. The police wrote a composite drawing of the individual. Okay. Who, in fact, I talked to the victim and the victim's husband, and the one thing he told me was, you know, the composite drawing. He goes, he also gave a description to the police, and I guess the final composite was off of his information. Okay. And he goes, the composite drawing doesn't look like your client. Right. But they just didn't want to have this case retried again. Okay. And I didn't know about the Brady violation. I didn't know about the newly discovered evidence until months after that. I did a Freedom of Information Act for the file, and it took months to get, and I finally got the file, and that's when we found this new document. And I actually took that document back to the victim's house because I wanted to show them the newly discovered evidence and the alternate suspect, and we had a composite drawing, or I should say a picture of the guy from the second crime the next day. He was actually shot and killed by the husband of the wife that he tried to rape on the second one. So I wanted to show pictures to them, and they opened up the door and told me, we were told not to talk to you. Wow. And I said, who told you not to talk to me? And they said, Kim Worthy with Wayne County.
So they didn't even look at the picture
They were told that we were told that if you come back to talk to us, that we were not to talk to you, and we were to call the prosecutor's office right away.
Now, why would a victim have any reason not to talk to anybody they want to?
Well, exactly. So I actually, it turned out it wasn't Kim Worthy that told him to do that. It was actually the Conviction Integrity Unit told them that, not to talk to me for whatever reason. I mean, I left a packet of, the newly discovered evidence on front porch of,
Okay.
of their house, hoping to get a call back from them, but I never did.
Okay.
So,
And the person that was killed, did their DNA match, or do they don't have his DNA?
well, when the next day on the second crime, the
Right.
guy comes up and robs the couple at gunpoint and,
Right.
and makes the same comment that I'm going
Right.
to have sex with your wife.
Yeah.
The husband got his gun and took it out and shot and killed him.
Right.
The police made reference on the report that this sounds just like the crime that happened yesterday.
Okay.
We probably need to get DNA. And but that not only did they not get the DNA, but that piece of evidence was never brought to my client's attention.
Right.
And I talked to his trial attorney and I showed it to him and he's like, this whole thing was an identity case.
Right.
And he goes, if we had this alternate suspect that matches the description of a 60-year-old witness who, for some reason, the prosecutors said wasn't credible. And I sat
Right.
down and talked with this guy 9 years later at 69.
Yeah.
And, he seemed very credible to me. He says the guy was like, they got a guy that's 5'6" doing this crime. When I saw it out my window, and I knew the guy from the neighborhood, he was a bad guy, and he was about 6 feet tall and 180 pounds in late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
He goes, he said I went to the lineup, and it was all guys 5'6".
Okay.
He just told the police
None of them match.
none of them match. This is ridiculous. You don't even have the right people in the lineup.
Right.
And the victims picked my client out by body type and that he was looking at the ground.
Okay.
I mean, that's how they picked him out. I kind of suspected maybe they were coached. I looked at who did the lineup, that officer, and there was court cases where that officer actually told people, hey, can you identify the guy? Well, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to be able to. Well, if you get up there and you have a hard time, it's number 5.
Oh,
I mean,
no
there's
kidding.
court documents showing that.
Isn't there supposed to be both attorneys in the room at the
You're supposed
time?
to, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, a lot of times they don't.
Okay.
They were taking a lot of shortcuts down in Detroit. So, I mean, that case is that one I've been doing that case pro bono for since 6-7 years now, because I just know the kid's innocent. There's
Yeah.
no doubt in my mind.
Right.
And I don't think they want a case like that to be overturned. I think right now Detroit's afraid of all the lawsuits. I mean, you got guys getting, $5 million, $10 million. I mean, Chicago just last week, a guy was awarded $60 million.
Okay.
And, I think they're afraid of, there's so many of these cases that could come to light that it could bankrupt the city. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Is that so there's no insurance to cover a lawsuit on these types of things? Like, it comes straight out of the city's coffers?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I was told, you get one person that says that it's insurance money, and then the next person says it's taxpayers' money. And I'll be honest with you, I really haven't researched that enough. I mean, I don't get any of that reward money. The only reward I'm getting is getting a person's case back into court.
Right.
That's my goal. The decisions have to be made on whether the information is true and whether they're going to overturn it. But it's getting my client back in court so they can present their case.
When is this supposed to go to the Supreme Court?
Well, that's a good question. Probably next year sometime.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are the Supreme Court's is the pinnacle.
Well, it's the Michigan Supreme Court.
Michigan Supreme Court.
So,
Okay. So how many processes does it have to go through to be seen at the Michigan Supreme Court?
well, I mean, we just wanted to do, we wanted to evidentiary hearings. So, my client he wanted it so bad he went and had some jailhouse attorney put a 6500 motion, which is a a motion for relief, to get his case back into court, and they did a terrible job. It got shut down right away, and so we had to jump in and overcome that, and we made a decision that it's best just to forget the appellate process. Let's go right to the Supreme Court, because I think they're gonna be less biased on the case. They're gonna listen to the evidence. They're gonna make the right decision, and that's kind of where we hung our hat, and we're hoping that they take a look at this case and look at the evidence, and do the right thing.
As you're describing all this, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of dedication. One of the things I've noticed in life is we can get into something and help out physically, financially, here and there, but in order for real change to happen, it takes a lot of stamina, a lot of dedication. It's not a part-time gig.
Right. Well, I take, I get prisoner calls a lot. I was taking every single one of them, even on weekends and nights, only because, these guys, they stand in line for 45 minutes to make a phone call, and I want to at least give them that respect. I've kind of limited that down. I gotta, my family. I mean, my wife really has no clue what I do for a living.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. I mean, if you sat down with her and asked her, "What does your husband do for a living?" I don't think she would be able to tell you. Because I just don't talk about it when I go home. Because of client privilege, I really can't.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think she really would care to hear about it anyway.
Yeah.
So but it's time consuming, and but I'm trying to balance it out, because I do have I do a lot of insurance defense work. I do child custody work. I do a lot of financial backgrounds, due diligence cases. There's a lot more that I do on a full-time basis that actually makes me a good living. The criminal work is, I do make money at it, but it's not, it's not my bread and butter. Any investigator that does criminal work knows that you're not going to get paid for every minute of your time doing a case. The money's just not there. You're dealing with people that just don't have the money to pay you.
I think part of the problem is, a lot of these people that they didn't get maybe represented as well as they could have in the beginning, and they didn't have the resources to.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think probably, they want to take a case, and they want to plea it down. Let's plea this down, and let's turn and burn them and be on to the next case. So you get a lot of guys in there that may not have done the crime, but I have a guy right now that his case, we're looking at a hearing coming up pretty soon on his case, and he was charged with murder, 18 years old. He was he was an A student down at Cass Tech, and they came into his classroom and took him down to the principal's office and said, you're being arrested for murder. And 18-year-old kid, he didn't know what was going on. It turns out that he was going to go to trial. He had a good attorney. He had a good defense. But his attorney died the week before the trial happened. And so they got a court-appointed attorney came in and basically told him, listen, he goes, we can get you a 10-year plea deal. You'll be out by the time you're 28 years old. And he goes, but I didn't do it.
How is that even remotely acceptable?
Right. He goes, I didn't do it. He said, I want a trial. He goes, you don't understand. You're a young black man in the city of Detroit, and if you roll the dice and go for a trial, there's a pretty good chance you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison.
Unbelievable.
So, this kid, he took a plea, which is probably the worst thing he could have done, being an innocent guy, because
Sure.
they don't want to look at people that took a plea, because when you take a plea,
They assume they're guilty.
well, now you got to, in order to take a plea, you got to admit to doing the crime.
Right.
So he had to sit there and admit to doing a crime he didn't do just to get 10 years.
How do you do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, what else? You're backed into a corner. You don't have any. It's his only way out. In that particular case, the guy that actually did the crime, I talked to him, and he gave me an affidavit saying, your client lost his phone at a party a week before this all went down, and I stole his phone, and I orchestrated this robbery that went wrong, where someone got killed, and but your client had nothing to do with it. I was the one that was driving the vehicle that your client is convicted of doing. And I also looked on.
Now, why would that person want to tell you that?
Well, because he is in prison right now.
Okay.
That's one thing. But he just said he needed to do the right thing, and I asked him that because he was up for parole in less than 8 years. I said, you give me this affidavit, it's going to probably put you in prison for the rest of your life. And he said, I'm willing to do the rest of my life in prison. This 18-year-old kid should never have been in the system. And
I mean, that's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to believe.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievably honorable.
I went to the Macomb Correctional Facility with my client's attorney, and we sat down and talked with him. And and also what I did too is I went down and looked at social media.
And how did you come across this person?
Well, what happened was when I took on the case, the first thing I do is I want to research the case. So I went in and Google is a pretty friendly thing for an investigator. I just put his name in, and a lot of things came up. There was a social media post on Facebook, and it had the actual news article of my client, his face on there, and it said there was just one comment on the post, and it said, "Oh my God, they got the wrong guy." So I located that person that made that comment, and I met with them over at a hotel lobby in Troy, and he told me that he was at a drug house, which is where the murder happened, or the killing happened. He says, I was buying some pot, came outside, I was rolling a joint in my car pulls up, and I look over, and I notice this guy, this driver, and I knew that guy by the name of Tony Stone. And two guys got out of the car. They went in the house. He goes, I heard what I thought was gunshots, and I took off. And it was 7 years later that he goes, I read this Facebook post and knew that your client wasn't the driver. It was Stone.
Wow.
And so about 4 days later, I was getting ready for work, and I got a phone call, prisoner call, and it was from some guy named Tony Stone. And he said, Steve, I heard you're investigating this case, and I want to talk to you. And so I was able to get into the correctional facility, and we talked for about an hour. And he gave me an affidavit breaking down how the crime happened. The two people that went in, one of them got shot and killed by the drug dealer, who happened to be a stepbrother. And there was only, I believe, 4 bullets.
Of the person he shot?
So the drug dealer shot one of the two that were in there robbing him, who happened to be his stepbrother. His stepbrother, he's the one, I guess, that told Stone that, hey, this guy has money and he has drugs. So that's why they planted a lick or a robbery, what they call. And it went wrong. I mean, the drug dealer realized that he was getting robbed, and he got his gun and shot and killed his stepbrother, but they put the murder on the other kid that was there with him, who was 16 years old, and then my client, who was 18, because he was the getaway car, or supposedly. And they put the murders on them.
Not on the drug dealer?
Not on the drug dealer. The drug dealer, the prosecutor's office actually asked him where the gun was, and he said it's in an abandoned house, and they asked him to go get it. And then they asked him to write a statement stating that Cody Clark, the co-defendant was the one that shot and killed his stepbrother. So, in my opinion, the prosecutors were coaching the drug dealer to commit perjury, if that makes sense, to lie. And that's all on Wayne County letterhead.
Well,
You know,
why wouldn't they just want to arrest the drug dealer that did it?
well, I mean, again, they got a murder, and they got to close the case, you know, at any cost.
Yeah.
And
So your client, how much time did he get?
which one's that?
The 18-year-old that they said was a driver.
No, he's still in prison right now.
But how much time did they give him?
Well, he's at the end of his 10. You know, his co-defendant just got out this year. He would have been getting out this year, but when he went in to prison, he was, someone tried to stab him, and he ended up stabbing another guy. So he ended up getting a couple years added on to his sentence.
Wow.
You know, he's just, an 18-year-old kid. You could imagine he was terrified.
So I'm just curious, even he didn't do it, but if he was the person that was the driver, and people go into a house and somebody gets killed and they come back out, maybe I'm naive. I'm almost surprised that the driver of a vehicle that didn't have anything to do with any kind of shooting has no control over any kind of shooting.
He made a choice to do a robbery, and the robbery went wrong. It's kind of like if you're a teenager and you go
if you're going to engage in a criminal act.
Well, if you go into Walmart as a teenager and one of your friends is shoplifting and you just happen to be with them, you might not even know that they were shoplifting, but you could also be charged with shoplifting because it's, you're associated with this person breaking the law, know, and in that case, he was part of the robbery that went wrong.
Sure.
And it turns out, we got the ballistics back. I think, now we're going, our defense now is, listen, I go, all the bullets came from the drug dealer's gun. So how in fact could...
And they do have the gun?
Yeah. So how in fact can you charge a kid with murder when he didn't even have a gun? The gun was in the drug dealer's hand. So our defense is you sentence the person the wrong sentence.
Right.
And so, I mean, and I think they're kicking the can until his time's up. So he does.
But this person needs to have his record clean. It's not just that he'll get out of prison and his time's up. He's accused of something that he didn't do.
And he's a very well-spoken kid. He's a very, he's very smart. He could have gone in there and crawled under a rock and felt sorry for himself. But he went in there and studied law, and he's been fighting for his life basically since day one.
Yeah.
So it's there's and I got a whole table of sad stories like that.
Yeah. It's
just no one wants to listen to it. It's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything more to talk about this aspect of it, but I'm fascinated in life, and I guess I'm patting you on the back, but also I'm curious as your take on it. I'm fascinated in life that things get done, good things happen, charities get built, or businesses get built, or people get cared for, taken care of, whatever.
Right.
And you see a good thing happen, and people don't often realize how much dedication and effort it took somebody in order to make that happen. And it's the idea that a lot of us can help out on the peripheral of things, and that is necessary. Mm-hmm. But it does take a person, 2 people, 3 people. It takes some people to get truly vested into something. And if you didn't, these people have a hopeful day or something, a hopeful month or a hopeful 6 months. Right. But if ultimately you decided you're going to spend your time elsewhere, then that'd be the end of it.
Right. Well, yeah, what's sad is that I'm one of the few investigators in Michigan that works directly with inmates. Most... And
you didn't up until you opened that letter.
I didn't, yeah. In fact, that juvenile lifer, I talk to him all the time, and and I always blame him for changing my direction in my career. In a joking way. I have a feeling
you're happy that you did.
I am.
Yeah.
It's satisfying.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like I said, I'm trying to help a lot of different guys out that are in there, and they're very respectful. They thank you. I mean, I get Thanksgiving cards and Christmas cards and birthday cards from inmates. I don't even get that from family.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're very appreciative of my time. They'll call me up and hey, how's your wife doing? How's your kids doing? And how's your health doing? They're asking me about me when and they're the one that has this huge burden that's causing them their freedom. So it's rewarding, and I there's a couple guys in there that there's a guy that was he was at his sister's wedding back in the late 80s when a murder happened in his neighborhood, and he was 45 minutes away from 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. And they arrested him and charged him with this murder, and he was at the reception, his sister's wedding. Got 61 affidavits saying he was at this wedding. Goes to court. The only witness is a crack addict. The judge throws the case out because the guy perjured himself 2 or 3 times in a 15-minute period and was unreliable, and it was considered a liar.
Okay.
Case thrown out. 16 years later, my client is driving to work, and he gets pulled over in a felony stop and arrested and charged for that same murder.
That the case was thrown out?
That the case was thrown out, the same murder, and the only piece of evidence they have is the star witness, who is the crack addict. And I located this crack addict, and he goes, I didn't see any shooting, Steve. I heard gunshots. I go, well, you told the police that you saw my client do the shooting. He goes, I didn't see anybody shoot anybody. I just told the police what they wanted to hear, basically. He's been in prison 26 years now. And he calls me up. In fact, I just talked to his sister this week. But he's like probably in the top 5 human beings that I really like in this world. I mean, he's just a super nice guy. He was dealt the wrong deck of cards, and his life was ruined and destroyed on a system that needed to solve a case with no evidence. And I've been trying for 5 years to get his case back in the courts, because his case should have never have gone back into litigation. I mean, especially 16 years later with no new evidence.
Right.
It's just crazy. But that's just how the system works. They just want to close cases at any cost sometimes.
Does he have a family?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I just talked to his sister a couple days ago. I mean, wonderful family. They support him. They go visit him. He calls me and doesn't talk about him. He doesn't talk about the fact that his life was destroyed. He talks about his faith in God. He talks about, he wants to be a free man before he dies. He's, he has some health issues. He has like no tickets. When you're in prison, if you do something wrong, you get a ticket, and he's like ticket free. But someone ends up stabbing him. And
how do you stay ticket free if
hard.
you have to defend yourself?
Yeah. So he ended up. He had hip surgery this year. He's had some health issues. And when you talk to him, he won't tell you. I mean, I don't even. The only reason I know about all that is because his sister will tell me about his health issues. And I'm like, he doesn't talk about any of that. He goes, he keeps a positive attitude, and which I mean, it's hard to do on the outside, let alone on the inside. I
was thinking about this yesterday, that in life things happen to us. We have some medical things that happen, some loss that happens that we don't want to have happen.
Right.
We might be harmed by somebody, financially, physically. We could be robbed. We could have damage done to us. It's hard to let that go. when somebody harms you, it is oftentimes very hard to let that go.
Right.
And these people that are in prison, they had some real damage done to them that they didn't do these crimes, and they're in prison. I don't know how I would let that go and be this person that you're describing.
Yeah, but you would be surprised. There's a lot of my clients are just like that individual. I mean, there's a video out there called "The Making of an Exoneree" on Rudy Thomas, who's one of my clients.
I watched that. And
this kid is just has such a positive outlook on life, such a happy guy. And
he got daughters.
He has two beautiful daughters, a family, a mother, sisters. Is a great supportive family. I talked to his buddies. His buddies are stuck behind him, and he's like, I'm like, Rudy, how do you keep so positive? And he goes, you get one life, and my life happens right now to be behind bars, wrongfully convicted, and I could be in here miserable and hating life and being, the person I don't want to be. He goes, but I got to be the best person I can be, regardless of what situation I'm in. And
how are you not angry at people?
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, you look at Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated, and his wife forgave the shooter. I mean, I don't know if I could do that. I'm a Christian man, but I don't know if I would be able to just like that forgive somebody like that. It just takes a lot of faith, and it takes, especially when you're still suffering from it. Yeah, he's still in prison. Yeah, so but he forgives. Rudy forgives the person that put him there, which is a guy that was forced to make a false confession, or they were going to put the murder on him. Right. And this was a college basketball kid. He's playing college, and in basketball, he happens to hear gunshots, and the next thing you know, the police are saying, you're going to say that this guy did it, or the neighbors are saying that the description of the person looks like you. Maybe you did the crime. Maybe we'll put it on you. So now is there really one victim or two victims? You got this guy that had to live 20 some years with, putting the wrong guy in prison. And I've talked to that guy, and he he feels bad about it, but that's the situation he was put into. So we're waiting for Rudy's day in court, but the wheels of justice are slow. It's a slow process. It's almost like it keeps turning until the inmate dies. Yeah. I mean, it's I hate to say it, but that's how it feels sometimes. Yeah. Well, that is something that I watched that video, and that's something that really touched me. Is I don't think I carry grievances, but this is another level, and it's just so impressive to see some of these people and their apparent attitude on life when it could be a lot different than that. Oh yeah, but it's easy to be angry, and that's what makes my job a little bit easier in doing criminal work, is that when you see a guy going to the law library every single day, researching and understanding the law. And some of these guys know the law more than some of these attorneys out there defending them. They're reading books 24/7. They have nothing better to do, but they're fighting for their life. Where if I get a guy that's in there and he's gang banging with a bunch of guys, and he's just like calls me up and says, "Hey Steve, I heard you're a good investigator. Could you look at my case and find something to get me out?" And I'm like, probably not. You know what I mean? Because I'm not going to go in there and spend time seeing if something sticks when I got all these guys over here knocking on my door that are fighting. You can tell the fighters, and usually the guys that are fighting hard are the guys that are innocent. Okay. And it's not like there's thousands and thousands of them. I mean, it's a small group of people, and it comes down to that 6 or 10%. Yeah. And I think most of those guys are fighting. Yeah. I did read a statistic the other day too. It was
Michigan Innocence Clinic.
Yes.
Yeah. Since they opened in 2009, they've helped 41 men and women wrongfully convicted get released. The Innocence Project, 102 false confession cases with DNA, and the DNA led to the true perpetrator being convicted 75% of the time. But then these real perpetrators went on to commit 25 murders, 14 rapes, and 9 other violent crimes before they ended up getting convicted.
Wow.
So there's, the two aspects of it is wrong person to jail, and that person's life is ruined, changed, modified massively. And then the real people that don't have a problem committing these crimes are out there committing more crimes.
Exactly. Yeah, and those organizations that you named off, the Innocent Clinic, Cooley Law School, I mean, they're great organizations, and they're dedicated. Most of them are, driven by college students that are, going into law. Yeah. And they dig hard, and they turn over every rock, to look for the truth. Yeah. So,
this idea of this confessions, like you mentioned, like it's hard to imagine giving a false confession. It's kind of like you said, if somebody confesses, it's automatically assumed that they probably did it. Mm-hmm. And what types of things have you seen lead people to do something like that, to confess to something that they haven't done?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of studies on false confessions. I mean, back in the 80s, there was the Reed technique, which, usually I went through it. I went through Wicklander, I went through Reed, and their different techniques. And when I was learning those techniques and interviewing interrogations, I was taught that there's a fine line between, getting a true confession and a false confession. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times, in those techniques, you go in and you're basically, accusing the person, Mm-hmm. Or in my juvenile lifer's case, he was in 16 hours of interrogation with 5 different detectives. Mm-hmm. And you put anybody in that type of situation, eventually you get to the point where the only way out is to tell them what you want to hear, or what mm-hmm. they want to hear, I should say. Mm-hmm. There's a detective, Barbara Simons in Detroit, that's retired now. I don't know, 6 or 7 exonerees in that case. Right. And she had a history of getting false confessions. I got a guy that I became friends.
Nicknamed the closer.
They call it, okay, you read about that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, one of the guys I got to know that was a victim of that. I mean, he was, he was at his job. And it was documented that he was at his job, and he was accused of a killing and a murder, and she basically said, "Listen, you're going to lose your job if you don't get you back to work. If you just go ahead and sign this, you can be on your way." And then he signs it, and then, okay, I just got you, and then he just signed a confession to something he didn't even read. Yeah. So it's, but yeah, there's false confessions out there. I think back in the 80s, 90s, it was huge. Mm-hmm. I think they've cleaned that. They're cleaning it up. I think it's getting better. The system's getting better. Okay. But you look at municipalities like Wayne County, Detroit. They had such a problem with crime that the feds even said, that they were gonna, if you don't get it cleaned up, we're coming in and cleaning it up for you. And I think at that point, that's when they started locking a lot of these guys up. And I think their philosophy may have been is, all right, he may have not done this crime, but he's mm-hmm. probably done a whole bunch of other ones. So getting him off the streets, the main focus right now. Yeah. And I could be wrong. That's my opinion, but that's how I.
Have you heard people say something like that, or seen anything like that would give you that opinion?
You hear it all the time. I honestly, I think that's, that there's a lot of, false confessions. Another exoneree was in for 34 years. He was in interrogations for hours, and he was, he was like a 15-year-old kid. Yeah. 5th floor of the Detroit Police Department. and he claimed he was innocent. They wanted nothing to do with that, and he dove headfirst out the fifth-story window and lived.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because they put you in a situation where they're not letting you go until you admit to it.
Wow.
And luckily there's a lot of guys that just.
And would people be in that situation without an attorney?
Probably not. I mean, the attorney's going to tell you not to talk to them,
Okay.
But a lot of times they, especially back then, they would bring them in and start talking to them.
So how does it work if somebody gets arrested, they're being interrogated, they don't have an attorney in their back pocket, because especially like especially if they're innocent and they're
right.
like, it's not like I know a lot of criminal attorneys because I'm not keeping a Rolodex of criminal attorneys. I'm not planning on committing crimes. So how does it work? They say I want to talk to an attorney, and then there's like a list of court-appointed attorneys that get dialed up and come in, or what happens?
There's court-appointed attorneys out there in every municipality. But I mean, as I told you, I don't know, a month ago, I mean, I'm pro blue. The cops, I got a lot of cop friends. They do a good job making sure that we're safe. I mean, in a society that we have, it wouldn't function without law enforcement, period.
Yeah.
But I've also learned doing criminal law is that if I were ever in a situation where the police were accusing me or investigating me, I'm not talking. I don't talk to police.
Yeah.
And I want an attorney. Those are your rights. They're supposed to give you those. Your rights. And you have a right to an attorney, and you can. And you just don't. You just keep your mouth shut. Period.
Yeah. I've been told the same thing by my police friends as well.
just keep your mouth shut.
It seems like that'd be the wrong thing that I wouldn't want to do. I'd want to talk. I'd want to give as much information as I could. My dad was a state policeman.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. He's passed away now. But the Michigan State Policeman, I mean, every time I see a Michigan State Police car, I get a warm feeling in my heart.
Yeah, they're a bunch of great guys. I got some good friends.
Yeah, we grew up in the UP. It was real small town living, and but as a kid growing up with my dad being a police officer, and he started off in Flat Rock. He did some work. He was in the riots during Detroit.
Oh, was he?
He was a police officer. They brought him in from Flat Rock, and then went up to mid-Michigan. He had some rough cases over there, and then eventually we went up to the UP when I was like 1.5 years old.
Okay.
But he didn't believe me, as a kid, something happened. And I just understood it at a young age. I'm like, my dad's not going to believe anything I say. And I had an unbelievably honest relationship with my dad, maybe more than most kids did, just because I know my dad's instinct was not to believe what I was saying was the truth. He got lied to all the time. For decades, Yeah. I mean, he got, ever since he became a police officer, he got lied to all the time. And I think his instinct wasn't to assume that I was, telling him the truth. But we had a great honest relationship, maybe because of that, of his natural instinct,
Yeah.
But
that's funny. So he was you said you were up in Manistee?
Up in Manistee. Yeah.
He may have pulled me over. I got pulled over in that town coming back from college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What year would that have been?
Probably early 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was cool. I was speeding. But I didn't know. But one of my college buddies had a fifth of booze in the back seat, and just sitting in his lap. And he's like, "What are you doing?" Because you can't be doing that. And they made him pour it out. But it was in your hometown there. I was dropping off a friend of mine that lived in that town.
Well, they're all good officers that I remember back then.
No, let's put it this way. Most police officers are they do a great job. I mean, it's just like, there's bad PIs. There's good PIs or bad PIs, good doctors, bad doctors. Yeah. Good cops, bad cops. I mean, it's across the board. But most police officers, are they're risking their life to protect us, and they do a good job, and they do it by the law.
My dad used to tell me too. He's like, when you get pulled over by somebody, you can usually tell. Like, everybody becomes a police officer for different reasons. Mm-hmm. and some because they want to help people. Some, there are some that maybe have a power trip out of it. But he said you can usually tell when you talk to somebody, like maybe what might their motivation be for getting into any job, a police officer or any job. Right. But I'm curious from your experience. There can be, we'll call them bad actors or whatever. Like for example, this one. Simon, that sound like there's some pretty questionable interrogation tactics, right? To get people to confess and on the fringe when maybe they shouldn't have confessed. But I'm also curious about the system itself, and so. So there could be, like in a situation, there could be a few people that didn't police as well as they could have, but then there's challenges within the system. So one example I'll give on that, I was listening to back in over the COVID era, 2021, about misinformation, and there was a interview with Zuckerberg, and he was talking about the reality of how do they try to screen for bad actors within social media. And he said it's just all algorithms. We dial up the algorithm to block more people, and then more innocent people don't get to share their message, and we dial down the algorithm so that we harm less innocent people that are just trying to share a message, and then we've got more bad actors that are able to put bullshit stuff out there on Facebook. And but that's true anywhere. So if you have a system that I'm going to make stuff up because I have no idea, but they've got a solve rate of 80% or whatever. If you increase the solve rate, there's a chance that you're going to have more innocent people fall victim to that. If you decrease your solve rate, you're going to have more nasty people out there in the world, and you're going to have less chance of innocent people be harmed by that. And so within the system, I think there's this complicated dilemma. And then you've got probably a few bad actors once in a while that pop up in a township or a town or an environment or something like that. What have you seen with how these innocent people end up getting prosecuted? How much sometimes it's the system that they're trying to solve cases or trying to improve their numbers or trying to do whatever, or how much sometimes it's been maybe the wrong person doing the job once in a while?
I'm not quite sure I understand your question, but I'll try to answer it. But as far as this might be a good edit point for you, I apologize, but I guess I didn't understand.
Well, so the system. So if you want to improve your solve rate, you go from here to here. When you do that, just like Zuckerberg explaining on Facebook, if you're going to tighten the controls, then there's a chance that more innocent people are going to get kicked off of Facebook, right? If you loosen your controls, then you're going to kick less innocent people off of Facebook. However, there's going to be more bad actors that get to keep spewing their hateful message. Right. And in a system that it's impossible probably to solve every crime. Right. Some people are going to get away with stuff. And in a system that goes in and tries to improve their metrics, there's a greater chance that probably more innocent people might get swept in.
Well, if I understand your question properly, prosecutors, they have a job. Their job is to prosecute people, and they don't want to lose at any cost. And in fact, some of these prosecutors, I have no idea how they live, go home and go on with their normal lives because they have this case, they want a conviction, and they want a conviction at any cost. Because by the time that gets to litigation, they want that conviction. If they didn't think they could get a conviction, they wouldn't charge the guy. They'd say, no, there's not enough evidence, and they'd let the guy go. So not only do they want the conviction, but they also need to fill up these jails. Getting into criminal law, I'm finding out with these prisons, it's kind of like a hotel, and they don't want a vacancy on the front door. They want them filled up. And a lot of these people that are coming in, if they don't have a proper attorney, someone that's going to fight for them, chances are they're going to do some type of time, whether it's a plea bargain or if it's, a sentence. A lot of these kids, their families don't have money to give to these attorneys to fight for them.
Why is there any relevance to how many people or how many spots are available in a prison relevant to like solving crime? Why is there any connection to it?
I just kind of threw that out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be totally wrong, but the more I get into it, it's almost,
not the first time I've seen or heard something like that.
It's like they just they don't want to let these guys out. You're in the system. They're getting money for them. Being in there, and you got it's like a business. You got to pay all these workers and civilian workers and so forth, and you got to keep these rooms occupied.
Yeah.
And they don't want to. The saddest thing I see with the justice system is that no one wants to admit that they made a mistake. And we're humans. We make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I've made mistakes my whole life. And you learn from those mistakes. But to ignore them and keep doing them is wrong.
Right.
And I know the prosecutors, they have a tough job. I mean, a lot of most of the people coming in there, did some bad things, and they need to pay the price.
Right.
But I know there's prosecutors that their gut says this kid probably didn't do it, but their job's to make sure that he goes to jail. And I don't think I've run across too many prosecutors that I've talked to that would, back down from that. Their job's to close the deal and put them, get a conviction. They want to have a 100% conviction rate. One of the guys I got out, the prosecutor was devastated because the guy was let go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you should be happy. The system wronged this guy.
Right.
And
That's
then
part of the system working.
And the system, the system figured out that a mistake was made, and they corrected it, and they let the guy out. You should be happy with that.
Yeah.
And I was told this prosecutor was devastated because he had a loss. You can't have a loss.
Yeah.
And I just can't wrap my head around that.
Do they have any? Liability? Financial, criminal, or otherwise, if they're wrong?
No,
everybody's going to make a mistake,
right? No, obviously it depends on the. Most of the time they get immunity from that. They're not going to get charged. But if you get someone that is breaking the law in order to get someone convicted,
that goes to the bad actor story.
It's the bad actor.
Yeah, right.
Like I said, most of the time the system's working. As flawed as our system is, it's still the best system in the world.
Yeah.
So it's just it's tough to be involved in it. It's stressful, it's tiring, and rewarding all at the same time. So it's but it's like I said, it's at the beginning, it's kind of my way of giving back.
It was hard for me to see how a system, how it could fail at all, because I think of it in my head of, good people trying to do good things. Again, it's my experience of knowing police officers and my dad,
sure.
and that's my experience. Good people trying to do good things and trying to keep people safe. And when they catch somebody that does do something wrong, then there's a system to punish you for that,
sure.
and keep you from doing wrong things again. And so it's a little bit difficult for me to have an appreciation that there could be a problem with the system, that the system could encourage sometimes incarceration for people that didn't deserve it.
Yeah, well, mistakes are made, and again too is a lot of times, you got jurors have a big, huge responsibility,
right.
and they're usually the ones that come down with the verdict.
Yeah.
And a lot of times their decision is based on the information that's put in front of them.
Right.
And it's not until years later that we uncover additional information
right.
that may have created reasonable doubt, or
Right.
would have thrown this case out from the beginning.
Yeah.
But I think the system, for the most part, the system works. And as far as like I said, there's bad actors,
Yeah.
and sometimes the bad actors are. I don't even know, like with prosecutors, if you want to call it bad act, they got a job. They got a tough job. They gotta present a case, and but where I have a problem is where they go too far, and just to get that 100% conviction rate at any cost.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be human. Would say, hey, this guy got in the system and shouldn't have. And
Right.
I've had cases where people have been convicted of or been charged with attempted murder or murder, and then I do the investigation, and the prosecutor looks at the investigation and says, no, this kid's innocent.
Right.
And doesn't try the case. So, I mean, I think for the most part, the system does work.
Yeah.
It's just a few incidents where it doesn't.
Like any in the medical world, the system can be very difficult. People trying to work with their insurances, getting
Right.
scheduled with doctors. It takes 2-3 months sometimes, or some doctors that do procedures that they shouldn't do sometimes or weren't necessary, and sometimes there's phenomenal people within that system. It works out great. In the financial services world, that you're going to receive advice from somebody. They're either wonderful or they're not, maybe.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
But the system has a ton of checks and balances to try to keep people, keep them giving the best interest advice for their clients.
Absolutely.
So in the criminal justice system, I think it's probably put in place to try to do right most often. But you're finding out it's pretty damn complicated when there is a mistake made. It's pretty damn complicated to get somebody out of that. Even in a charity or a religious system, there's a business behind it. A charity, a church, an entity needs to have money to exist.
Right.
So everything gets complicated, especially
Sure.
the bigger system. It gets complicated, and I'm able to recognize that the complexity, that there are flaws within a system. And again, I'm impressed by you. It comes back to there has to be really good people somewhere within any system to have the stamina and the guts to get in there and follow something through and to help out when it doesn't go right.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's kind of, I don't know if it came down to one letter on Christmas Eve, and here we are, talking about it. I'm glad I didn't throw that one letter in the basket, because it's changed my life too.
Yeah. How many cases do you think you've been working on?
Since 2017, I mean hundreds of cases, literally.
Oh, wow.
Some of them are just task-oriented type cases. Go out and interview this person, or go grab these files, do a case review, or but it's and I have an Apple box or a legal box, literally overflowing with letters that I've opened and responded to, but I just can't get to. I mean, there's just not enough time in the day or days in the week. So I've tried to get a couple other investigators that do work with inmates to take over some of the, the overflow, to make sure that, I mean, for someone to go and write a 15-page letter, handwritten, deserves at least a response back.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to at least do that.
Yeah.
But I got to, unfortunately, because I'm only one guy, I have a whole other side of my business.
Yeah.
I have to kind of pick and choose what I do.
Yeah. Have you seen towns or people, offices, townships where they just really work the system incredibly well? Like it's, like they're listening to these cases. There might have been a mistake made 10, 15, 20 years ago. They're looking at it. They're intently trying to fix things that were wrong?
I think it's getting better. I think
Okay.
these conviction integrity units coming in. Each county, a lot of
Can you
counties have
describe
one.
that? I don't know what that is.
Well, conviction integrity unit is they'll have an individual that is an attorney or was a prosecutor or what have you, and they develop a team with lawyers and detectives, and they will look for actual innocent cases, and they would reinvestigate it, similar to what I'm doing.
And does that happen? That didn't exist a while back, and now it does exist?
No,
or?
it's always been there. The problem that I find with most conviction integrity units, and I know people that work within them, and they're good people and they're good attorneys or prosecutors. I mean, they're trying to do the right thing. The problem with that unit, it's in the prosecutor's office. That's like putting the fox in charge of the chicken coop. You don't want, you have the department that put you in prison now has a unit that's going to look at your case for actual innocence. I think it needs, until it works, I think it needs to be separate.
Is it separate anywhere, or is it always inside?
You have a conviction integrity unit. The Attorney General has one. We have one, for the counties that don't have a unit.
Okay.
But I don't know how. I know some of the people that are working it, and they're really, they're good attorneys and good investigators up there. I don't see the numbers, so to speak, coming out of the Attorney General's office. So I don't know, and I just don't know much about their caseload or how many, what their goal is. I know with, say Wayne County, maybe even Oakland County. It used to be they were looking at all cases. You could file an application, it goes in to the conviction integrity unit, and when your case comes up, they'll review it. And there might be a couple thousand cases in that unit with only 4 or 5 people working it. So they're up against the battle, and so now what they're trying to do, it's my understanding, is they're trying to just whittle it down to just actual innocence. And not get the guy that maybe did the crime, but how they got him convicted was a little sketchy. They're going after the one where he's clearly innocent, and that's where they're focusing their energy. And I think that's where it should be focused. So,
So hopefully the front end continues to improve as we get better at solving crimes and more technology behind it and more evidence behind it. Then the backlog is just an ongoing.
With DNA and video everywhere, it's just getting
better than it used to be.
Oh, it's great. I went out this weekend and to get video and you got to go quick because it disappears after a week or a month. Yeah. And then you got the video and now you got the crime. Yeah. And now I can see what happened with my own eyes. It's that didn't happen 20 years ago. You know, when you knocked on the business door and they didn't have the VHS, they didn't have the recorder working, or there's no tape in the machine. So it's getting better, and it's getting better, and it's gonna. I think it's gonna get the bad guys off the street, and it's going to hopefully, when there is a mistake,
the accuracy level will be
level is going to be better, and I think it's going to be a good thing down the road.
Yeah, I got a few more questions for you.
Sure.
How do you think this work has changed your perspective or changed your life?
I'll tell you, I've walked 3 guys out, and there's no other feeling like that. it's weird. It's almost like, and I'll be honest with you, the 3 that I walked out, I was, I think someone up above just threw a couple Nerf balls at me. To get me in the game, to get me looking at these cases, because I'm finding out how difficult it really is. It's almost impossible.
If you knew how difficult it would be, would you had started? Or
probably not.
That's what I love about going into something somewhat naive about it. Sometimes is I think a lot of wonderful things happen because we don't know exactly how hard something is.
Mm-hmm. Well, another thing too is. You financially, you're looking at it. I own a business. Right. I've had lots of employees from time to time, and and you're looking. I'm a numbers guy, so I look at my numbers, and and here is a business that is not generating the revenue.
Not your profit center.
It's a loss.
Yeah.
But I didn't start doing it. I've been fortunate throughout my life. I made a lot of good choices and built a solid business that it's given me the flexibility now to do some good with it. Not saying the other stuff wasn't good, but to help people out. Because people forget these guys in prison, whether they did it or they didn't do. At the end of the day, they're still a human being, and a lot of times they get treated like a stray dog, throwing scraps at them. And I never gave much thought of it prior to getting into doing criminal work, but just the reward of uncovering something that they're saying wasn't there. When someone says there is no actual innocence here, and then I peel through the onion and I'm like, well, here it is. It's right here. They are innocent. If I would have just and I've had one of the people that came out. I was told wasn't this case. There's no actual innocence here, and I kept fighting with it. And walked the guy out, and if I would have just went with the flow and said, okay, there's no actual innocence here, and walked away from this young man, he would be still in there, you know? So I guess, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just helping guys to, get their case heard is rewarding. My goal is, my goal is to get it in the court, let the courts do their thing. But finding that evidence to get it in there is the tough part. So.
Well, you sound like you've gotten good at what you do over the years of being an investigator.
I'll tell you what, I learn. That's one good thing about it too, is I learn every single day. Where the stuff I was doing before, I knew it. I was a good fraud investigator. I mean, it was like, time to make the donuts. I knew how to do it. And without any hesitation. Here, it's a big, huge learning curve, and but there's nothing wrong with learning. At any age,
Do you carry this work more than your other work in your head? Does it stay with you more, or is it still where the job is done today and now I'm?
It's it all. I try to leave it at the office. When I start dreaming this stuff, then I know it's time for a vacation. But I've been doing it for forever. It seems like my whole life doing. I went to Northern Michigan up there in the UP. They had one of the best criminal justice programs in the country back in the early '80s, and my goal was to be a police officer. That was my dream. And then I get out and start interviewing, and I found out I was colorblind. Which I guess explains why I flunked geography in the 8th grade with color and the countries in. But I'm like colorblind. I flunked it, and they said, well, you can't be a police officer colorblind, at least back then. And so I wanted to, I actually enlisted in the Marines, and then I got, I don't know if you remember Perry Drug Stores. I was doing undercover work for them back in college, and they offered me a supervisor position, and they called me like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I hadn't heard from the Marines, and I decided to go with Perry Drug Stores, and at 3 o'clock the Marines called and said, "Oh, you're in," and I'm like, well, I just accepted a job. So it's choices. It's amazing when you look back at the choices you make. Just changes the direction of where you go in life. And I'm glad that one letter kind of put me in this direction, because I'm happy with it. I enjoy it, and I like helping people. So it's been a good thing. So how'd you like Marquette? I've been all over this world, and Marquette's probably in my top 5 happy places in this world. God, I love Marquette.
It's one of my favorite towns.
I'd live up there right now if I could make a living, doing what I'm doing. My son, he did skied with a race for Michigan State alpine skiing. and they would go up there for one of their events up there and one of their races, and it would be the weekend they had the dog races starting.
Okay.
And he would, the first time he went there, he was like, "Dad, now I know why you love this place." Because I tried to get him to go there, and he wanted to go to state.
Yeah.
And I think if he did it over again, he'd go to Northern. It's a great place to go to college.
Yeah.
The outdoors and
just swim in Lake Superior much when you were up there?
Oh yeah.
It was a lot colder back in the 80s in those towns.
I remember we'd go out to Black Rocks and jump, and it'd be like 50 degrees.
People don't know. Like they jump into Lake Superior now, they have no idea.
It's like August. It's 89 degrees out, and the water's 50.
Idea what it's like. So I remember it was sometime in the 90s, Lake Superior didn't freeze over.
Okay.
It used to freeze all the way over. It didn't freeze over. And then once that happens, it's harder to freeze over because the surface temperature doesn't get as cold as it did, the previous winter. And so the next year, less of it freezes over, and the next year and the next year. And I heard a while back that like the water temperature at 100 feet in Lake Superior is what the surface temperature used to be. And I know back in the 70s and 80s, but I'd get in Lake Superior, like, you had a real hard time getting past your knees. And now I see people swimming around it like they have no idea.
That's crazy. Well, on the beach, there's those rocks way out there.
Yeah.
And I remember we'd swim out to those rocks, and the water's cold. And one of my friends started drowning. And I had a
you lose muscle function.
He couldn't function, and he he kept wanting to drown me, and I had to kick him down and get behind him and bring him in, and he said the cold was getting to him. You could start going into hypothermia.
Yeah, and you just can't move your limbs.
Right. You start getting muscle cramps. It's crazy. But we used to swim it. We used to always go in there in January. And I never remembered it when I was up there freezing over like it does now. I don't think it ever.
Oh, it doesn't freeze over. It was toward the late 80s into the 90s that it started to not freeze over as much. And it kind of became a progressive thing where it froze over less and less every year. Because the surface temperature was starting to change. It didn't get that ice all the way across it, and it would get the next summer. It never got as cold over the winter across the entire lake, and so the next summer just a little bit warmer, a little bit warmer, a little bit warmer. Yeah, it's still cold.
Oh, it is. We used to, where they bring the iron ore in there. Yeah. We call it the hot ponds.
Oh yeah.
The water cools the machines down and comes out, and who knows what we were swimming in, but it was warm and or warm for Marquette.
Back in the day, I mean, you'd swim inside like the mouth of a river or something where you get that river water, which normally river water is pretty cold, but it's a lot warmer than Lake Superior water.
Oh, I know. Yeah. No, I mean, I would walk to class and my Pepsi would turn into slush because it was so cold, and you'd be sitting in class and you'd look at your khakis and there's blood coming through your pants because you're so dry from the cold. Yeah. It's like they said it was a dry cold, like Arizona in a dry heat. Well, it's 50 below zero.
Walking on the snow sounds like styrofoam.
Yeah.
Crunch, crunch.
We did crazy stuff. I mean, I remember getting snow skis out and getting like 4 or 5 of us behind a station wagon and skiing all the way to Big Bay Inn, and no, I love Marquette. So
beautiful place.
Yeah, so it's great to hear that someone else loves it as much.
Oh yeah. It's one amazing town.
It is great.
It's a town that's embraced the college. It's got a diversity of culture. It's got a lot of different people.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very athletic town.
Oh, it is.
People are very active.
You have the Olympic Training Center up there. I don't know if that's still up there or not.
I think they still get some Olympians up there, I think. I don't know.
They had the Winter Olympics training up there.
Yeah. They still do that dog race.
Yeah. No, I took my family up there for between Christmas and New Year's a few years back to go skiing, and man, it's cold up there.
Yeah,
but I love it.
Did you ever do the Trinary outhouse races?
What's that now?
No, so in the little town of Chinary, it's between Munising and Marquette, south of 28, so it's off of 94. It's a real little town. Mm-hmm. But they have these annual Chinary outhouse races where people build an outhouse and then they race them down the snow-covered, Main Street downtown.
Oh, yeah. No, I've seen pictures of it. It sounds like a hoot.
You know, if you're going to live up there in the winter, you better enjoy some activities, wintertime activities.
It's crazy. I mean, 84. I graduated in 85, winter of 85, December. I only had one class that semester because my counselor missed accounting class that I didn't take, which that semester was probably a great time. But when I went back from after Thanksgiving, it took me from Farmington, Detroit area, to my to Marquette. It took me 28 hours.
No.
And it was a snowstorm.
Oh my gosh!
And we had to wait at the bridge for the semis to back up, so they would block the wind. Yep. And at that point, there was a lady from Livonia. She was in a Yugo, and that flew over the that
Yugo.
It flew over the bridge.
Scared the crap out of all kinds of people for a long time.
And then all the hotels, all the schools and churches were booked up with all the college students, and going to the Seney stretch. I had three of my buddies out there with sticks, just making sure we're on the road. Yeah. Because it was 40 some inches of snow at that point. And then we got to Munising and went to the state police office and begged them to sleep in the jail cell that night. And they wouldn't. They go, you got to commit a crime to get in here. And so then we ended up trucking it back to Marquette, but it took 28 hours. It was crazy. Yeah.
No, that stretch, if a lot of times you don't take 28 in the wintertime, but if you do, man, that wind's coming across that lake. There's some huge drifts. You can't see anything.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's fun times.
You got to assume the car in front of you is still going forward. Otherwise, everybody's just going to run into each other.
And I came home one Christmas in the back of a pickup truck in December. And it looked like I went to the Caribbean because I had a windburn for 2 weeks. But no, that was just some good times up there. So
I got one more question for you. So the name of this podcast is
Wealth is a Choice. Boom.
Okay.
And at the end of the podcast, we always ask people, do you think wealth is a choice? In wealth, in the terms of my financial planning practice, we're talking about money, but to me, wealth means a lot of things. It's abundance. It could be money, but it could be community, could be health, could be relationships, could be a lot of things. So I'm not going to define what it is for you, but the question I have for you is, do you think that wealth is a choice?
That's a great question. I think not only wealth is a choice, I think life is full of choices, and especially looking in the work I do, is one bad choice can change the direction of your life, just like one good choice could. Like choosing Perry drugstores. Marines might have been a better choice, but at the time that looked like the right choice. And it takes you in a different direction. I grew up working and hustling as a kid, making money. I paid for my college. I invested early, and I thought, the goal was to retire and have, the money so you didn't have to work. And as you get to the retirement age, and I can retire, it's like money's not it. It's it's family. I think family is wealth. I think more important to that is time. Time. It keeps ticking. Time is wealth. I mean, you can't get time back. And at the end of the day, when your time's done, the only people that are going to be there are the people that you developed relationships with. So I think wealth is the people you surround yourself with. At the end of the day.
Do you think if you didn't have saved your money and everything, if you weren't able to have that financial independence, that you would be chasing that, not recognize where your real what really is valuable? Or do you think having done the right things over your life allows you to really embrace and see what's so important?
I mean, it alleviates. I mean, trust me. I mean, life's stressful. No matter whether some people that have the most money are worse off than the people that I know a lot of people that have no money that didn't save, and they're the happiest people on this planet. I think I was disciplined. I saw that my parents, they have the retirement they wanted to do and the travel they wanted to do. And I mean, I was, I graduated from high school and I had 25 grand in the bank. And
That's amazing.
And I threw that into college.
Yeah.
I paid for college.
Amazing.
Yeah, I bought my first car at 15.
Yeah.
And I was driven by, a work ethic, and working long hours and working long, now I talk to I was talking just this weekend with my son, and I said, I was telling him, if you work long hours, you're going to get noticed and you might get promoted more. And he says, Dad, that's not even a thing anymore. I'm like, it's still a thing.
Yeah.
But you see these kids, and even adults. Like even I've had secretary, administrative assistants, and it was like we made the joke, like, okay, it's 3 o'clock. She's going to be in her car in 20 seconds,
Yeah.
and then one of the guys in another office would send me a picture, and it was my administrative assistant sliding down a dinosaur into, Fred Flintstone's car.
Yeah.
So, people have their different things,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as, your job goes. I was I was motivated. Money never really was the motivation. It was just my dad taught me to work hard, and work for everything that you get. And but I was also raised on, you say wealth is a choice. I was raised with choices, and then I chose to raise my kids. Everything's a choice. I mean, we always, if you ask them how many times did your parents tell you about choices, they're going to tell you, I don't know, millions of times.
Yeah.
So wealth is. It's a choice. I mean, everybody can do it too. I mean, I try to tell, my kids are at it. I got them investing when they were in 6th grade. I even, was invest $5. See that $5 turn into 10.
Mm-hmm.
And if people would just take a little bit aside and put it's going to grow,
Mm-hmm. It's amazing how the math works.
It is, but you got to do it. And, and once you do it, then you get, you can see that, hey, maybe I got a chance, and I think anybody, you look at these stories of like a school janitor that dies and he has, $3 million in a shoebox.
Surprises everybody.
Yeah.
Well, I think that book a while back, The Millionaire Next Door, it was a well-written book and a good title to it, and it really showed people that those with wealth often don't have the flashy things because they're a consumption of resources and they don't make any money.
Right.
It's often these people that live in what looks like a normal lifestyle.
Well, that's like, my wife, she's driving a Ford Escape, from a Mini Cooper. She's like, why am I driving a Ford Escape? I go, it's a good car. It gets you to work and back, and it's transportation, and then, you look at, I got friends that they have $200,000 in vehicles in their driveway and not a dime saved.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you gotta, it's discipline,
Yep.
And it's, I live in Orchard Lake. My wife says we're the poorest people in Orchard Lake, so I go like, well, we live where we want to live, know, and.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to, some of these friends of yours now, some of these people that you're helping that you're so impressed with, that they're this positive mindset that they have, even though they've been, not by their choice, have been put in a pretty bad situation. It's just how they remain as positive and upbeat and friendly and asking about your life is really something.
No, I wish it would rub off on me because I could, be a better person, and I wish I could control my, emotions like that. I mean, you get in bad spots, and it's just, to have that mindset is, to me, that's wealth. I mean, because they could be in there just crawled under a rock, being miserable and hating life, and cursing the people that did this to them, but they chose to fight.
Yeah.
And that's what it boils down to.
Well, thanks for being so good at what you do, for being an investigator for so many years, and now you can take that talent and that skill and you can help some people out and doing some things you probably never expected you'd be doing. But and thanks for sticking with it. and because that's what it takes in this world to be a better place, is that some people have to really stick through some things.
Yeah, well, I
and get it
appreciate
done.
that. I appreciate you having me today. It was
Yeah.
it was a good time.
Enjoyed it immensely. Thanks a lot, man.
All right. Well,
All
I'll see
right.
you.
Awesome.